Aston Villa have taken a huge step towards the top four after beating Chelsea by 2-1, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at how they did it, including a look at the change that Unai Emery made to exploit Chelsea's new tactics. Chelsea started the game really strong and actually operated in a different way that we've seen them this season, still applying Enzo Maresca's principles of play, but building up in a different way entirely. This time they set up originally with their 4-2-3-1, however Enzo Fernandez was a little bit further ahead in that attacking midfield role. He moved across to allow Cole Palmer to drift infield, therefore creating Maresca's box that he likes. He's still got a fullback in midfield in Reece James, but in this particular instance, Malo Gusto, instead of inverting, moves forwards and then creates that width that we know Chelsea really want. This gives them their 5 attackers, their 5 defenders that they really want once the back 3 shuffle across and then get composed like that. It was the inclusion, though, of Pedro Neto that allowed them to really start to isolate channels in Aston Villa's back line. The high line that Villa play is always going to be a problem when you turn over the ball in transition. And once Chelsea managed to find that transition, they were able to then exploit these lines, these pockets of space. And it was the runs of Pedro Neto that really started to find those major instances. From that point, it was about getting the players that you know are really going to make a difference in the attacking area into the box. I'm talking the likes of Enzo Fernandez. I'm talking the likes of Cole Palmer, Christopher Nkunku. It was a really good start from Chelsea, and these were the basics that saw them really elevate themselves throughout the half. And this is exactly where Chelsea's goal comes from. So we've got Moises Caicedo here currently on the ball. But let's take a look at this Aston Villa setup. You've got the 2 midfielders, you've got the 3 attackers, and you've got the striker. But notice the position of Matty Cash. The ball has just been turned over, and that means that Chelsea are now looking for a transitional play. Enter both Moises Caicedo and Pedro Neto, because Pedro Neto's run is absolutely sensational up on this right flank. When you've got a striker, you want them to be able to run the channels. You want them to be able to expose the sides of your opposition defence, and that's exactly what Neto does brilliantly here. So as Caicedo passes the ball over, you've got this bending run from Pedro Neto. It's so good. Very Nicholas Jackson-esque. I think Nicholas Jackson's been really missed within this Chelsea setup, really making those runs, spreading that defence, and in this instance Neto does it pretty brilliantly. He drives down the Aston Villa left-hand side, Chelsea's right-hand side, but then it's the second phase of play that I also want to focus on from a Chelsea point of view. You've got Christopher Nkunku, you've got Enzo Fernandez, you've got a central Cole Palmer because he's drifted in from that right flank. They're running towards the box and filling this penalty area. This is something Chelsea haven't done enough of lately, and in this particular instance, they really do get their reward for it. Neto drives past Maatsen and then plays a fantastic cross into the box. And again, it's those players that you're looking for to really make the difference, those attacking players. And in this instance, they get their reward. They get that real attacking influence, that attacking play, and Enzo Fernandez gets his goal from a brilliant Pedro Neto cross. It's fantastically worked, and it's the style and a real phase of play that I think Chelsea fans will want more from their side, that transition-based football, that quick pace of play, and that intention to go and get a goal. But although Aston Villa were a goal down, they were far from out of it. And in fact, later on down the line and throughout the game, they really grew into the match. And this is because the original tactics that Unai Emery set out his side with were correct. And they were the right ones to really start to try and exploit Chelsea. But the personnel in this particular instance wasn't correct, which means that a change at half-time is the thing that really changed the game. The game changer of this situation was Marcus Rashford coming on for Jacob Ramsey. And I'll explain why in just a second. But just to really take a look at the way that Aston Villa wanted to build, you've got Morgan Rogers out on this right hand side. He's going to want to drift in the field, very similar to the way that Jacob Ramsey does on that left hand side. But in this particular instance, you've got Aston Villa focusing their width with their fullback down the right. This enables Matty Cash to then come forwards, and you've got Rogers drifting in field. Now in this particular instance, when you've got Jacob Ramsey out on this left hand side, You need him to be holding the width. This is because Maatsen isn't going to be overlapping too much, and your overlapping run is going to come from Cash, which means you need to really be holding that. The problem that Jacob Ramsey had on occasion was that he drifted infield. The second thing that I think Unai Emery really noticed was the positioning of Malo Gusto, something that I don't think he could necessarily have accounted for. He will have understood the way that Chelsea wanted to build up, but the positioning of Gusto forced his hand, I think. He then really capitalises on Marcus Rashford's inclusion, because when bringing in Rashford, you're asking him to then take this space. That's his power. That's his job. That's what he's so good at. Driving with pace, with purpose, with direction against that Chelsea centre-back because of the positioning of Gusto. You're looking towards the width of Rashford and his dynamic play to be able to open up the game for Aston Villa. And that is exactly what he did. Rashford's explosive pace and striker's instinct really was the thing that got Aston Villa back into the game. Him holding out onto this left-hand side to better expose that Chelsea right flank. The next thing you've got to talk about is Cole Palmer and him not tracking a run backwards. You're also looking at the run of Malo Gusto. He's being exposed here out on this left-hand side. Now, although this doesn't necessarily come from an open play situation, and although it's a turnover allowing for Matty Cash to cross the ball in, we need to understand the run that Rashford's making, and that's a really wide, nice run out, exposing that wide area next to Gusto. Gusto's got a bit of a problem because he can't close the space down towards the rest of his team, and he's also got to look over his shoulder because he's got Marcus Rashford just lurking there. As the ball gets crossed in brilliantly by Matty Cash, you've then got this run from Rashford. It's so good. Look at him. He's ready, he's pouncing, he's taking that offside line, and it's really well done. The space that's been afforded to him as well because of that really high Chelsea line. Again, a good line by Chelsea, but it's been taken and exposed by that explosive pace, that striker's instinct from Rashford. It's so good. The cross is fantastic, and then you've exposed Malo Gusto, but I've got to give Gusto credit because that touch is absolutely sensational. Although he's unfortunate and he doesn't get the clearance that he needs, you've got to give him credit for even getting there. The next thing I want to talk about is Marcus Rashford and the way that he's able to, while he's off balance, get that touch to just square it across the box. This is a Rashford that's enjoying his football. This is a Rashford that's able to utilise that explosive pace, but then keep his head composed, pick his head up and pick and make the correct pass. I think if this was a Rashford of 6 months ago, he'd try to shoot or at least try to do something else, but he composes himself, he squares the ball, and it allows Asensio to get that easy tap in. But again, it's all created and orchestrated by that brilliant explosive Marcus Rashford run. Marcus Rashford was involved yet again, this time for Aston Villa's second goal. He takes a short corner towards Youri Tielemans and then that gets played back to him. But notice the positioning of these Chelsea defenders once we move this on a touch. They're going to be playing a high line, trying to spread out and push forwards. But as they stay in that line, notice the movement of Marcus Asensio. He's going to be around this area. Just keep an eye on that. So as Marcus Rashford picks up the ball, it's then about him driving. Now, although he's on his left foot, he does a very good job to make that first time cross through into the box. If he takes any longer, he's going to be closed down, he's going to be pressurised, and it's going to be an issue. This pass from Tielemans is really well weighted and almost makes Rashford's mind up for him. I think Marcus Rashford is at his best when he doesn't have to think too much, when he's instinctive, and that is exactly what happens here. As it gets crossed into the box, notice the position of Marcus Asensio. Although he looks like he's being marked, his movement just away from the Chelsea defender gives him the time and space to be able to get a good contact onto this cross. And remember what I mentioned earlier about that Chelsea line. Because they are so determined about getting into a good offside line, they're forgetting about the players in the box that could be making a difference, and that's exactly what happens here. Asensio makes a fantastic contact onto the ball and it goes in, obviously through a mistake from Jorgensen. It's unfortunate, but I think Aston Villa are rewarded for their really good efforts, especially in that second half, coming back into the game. And I think overall, I don't think you could have complained that they won the game. I think they did very well, and that change from Unai Emery really turned it into Aston Villa's favour. And all in all, I think this is a big example of the contrast in the way both teams are run. Aston Villa with 2 loanees, and Chelsea fans left frustrated with the lack of transfer window action to help bolster their attacking outlets. All in all, Aston Villa win the game in pretty brilliant fashion late on, and it's a fantastic worked goal from both of their loanees. just shows the difference in the way both clubs are run. But of course, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.